But I then decided that I couldn't sit back and allow other 14-year-old kids to be put through what my son went through with the personal hearings. I can't believe that at the time, the Football Association guidance said that, you know, a 14-year-old could go into the same room as the very people that abused them. I work in HR, and we wouldn't do that in HR with adults.
Hello, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a special edition, our 10th edition of The Final Whistle. Stop nodding. And we've got a very special guest of Ceri, who's Ref Support UK's Parental and Youth League Ambassador, but he also does work for the RA, which she'll explain in a minute. Ceri, you might have noticed, she'll explain how I met her electronically. But basically it ended up in the FA changing some of their processes of how they deliver discipline and other procedures with regards to the FA. So Ceri actually created a paper that brought about positive change nationwide by dealing with the FA and Mark Ives. So ladies, gentlemen, and anyone else listening, welcome to Ceri.
Hello, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome. Hello. Thanks for the introduction.
No, that's all right. Ceri, I know I don't want to sound like this was Tinder or something, but we met online. We met online through Twitter, and it was a bit of a negative sort of engagement in the beginning, wasn't it? But obviously the outcome ended up being wonderfully positive outcome down to your drive and commitment and intelligence. Do you want to just explain how the journey started and where you are now?
Yeah, so just to make clear, gents, I am not a referee, as you know, never have been. I'm not that crazy. But I have a 14-year-old son who, from the age of 10, he's obsessed with football, always has been. He plays, he watches. From the age of 3, he'd go down the local park and watch Sunday football, listen to all the swearing and loved it. But from the age of 10, he wanted to be a referee. So he did his course when he was 14. And in his very first game, I never experienced anything like it, and I hope neither of us ever do again. But it was an under-12s game, and 2 coaches on this one particular team were horrific. He missed an offside in probably about the 10th minute and was literally for the rest of the game berated, shouted at, abused. The coaches were kicking things on the sideline. They were swearing. They wound the players up to the extent where the players, these 11-year-olds, were scrapping on the pitch. We walked away from that with me telling both those coaches they were an absolute disgrace to junior football, and my son then sat in the car really upset. He did go on 2 hours later to referee another game, an 11v11, which was absolutely brilliant, totally different game. But then what that then led to, obviously, we reported these 2 coaches. And the first thing that we heard from the county FA, and we had no idea of the processes, all the procedures, we were new to all of this. It's not something that's taught on the refs course. So he did his report. We then got a phone call from our county FA to say that these 2 coaches had requested a personal hearing. Well, I didn't know what a personal hearing was at the time. I work in HR, so I understand investigations and all that kind of stuff. So we were told that a personal hearing is where basically these 2 coaches could put their case forward for that they hadn't done this, or it was a not guilty kind of plea. And I was really shocked because my view was, I was sort of like, hang on a minute. So you've got a 14-year-old child who has been brought to tears by 2 adults who had screamed and shouted at him for, an hour, and you want to put my son, a 14-year-old kid, back in the same room as the very 2 people that abused him, as if he has got a case to answer. I said no, it wasn't happening. There was no way that was happening. It was then offered online. My son was still just too upset and too emotional and angry to be dealing with that. So the hearing did go ahead. And unfortunately, because the hearings, all this stuff works off, the balance of probability, because there was only one witness there in person, these two guys got away with it. As a mother, never mind as a parent of a referee, as a mother, I was furious. So I'd taken to Twitter to start to talk about, our experiences and abuse of new and young referees. And that's when, obviously, I got chatting to yourself, Martin, through Ref Support. Obviously, at the time, really appreciative of your help and support, because I felt we were on our own to an extent. I didn't know the process. I didn't know how it worked. I was, completely new to all this. I can probably tell you word for word now, guidance note 7.3 on personal hearings, because I know those like the back of my hand now. I didn't at the time, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't think that our county FA dealt with it particularly well at the time, because safeguarding weren't involved. We didn't get a call to ask about my son's welfare or how he was. It was all about the process. That then led to, through Ref Support, me ending up going on TalkSport. And then I happened to respond to a tweet from Nahal Athanaika, who is a presenter on 5 Live. And he then invited me onto 5 Live. So it sort of snowballed from there. But I then decided that I couldn't sit back and allow other 14-year-old kids to be put through what my son went through with the personal hearings. I can't believe that at the time, the Football Association guidance said that, a 14-year-old could go into the same room as the very people that abused them. I work in HR, and we wouldn't do that in HR with adults. So with the support of Martin, Ref Support, and a number of other people that I then got to know in the refereeing community, I decided to start a campaign to change the way that personal hearings were dealt with for those under the age of 18, for children basically, and to help safeguard them. So I did lots of research. I spoke to referees, I spoke to their parents, I spoke to junior football clubs, I spoke to referees associations, I spoke to county FAs, and I pulled together a paper which ran to probably 17 pages long in the end. The result of that was some really good and useful conversations with Mark Ives, who was head of judicial services at the FA at the time. Some great conversations with Mark. Mark very kindly took that paper, he read it, he listened, he took that to the discipline committee. They agreed that changes should be made, and in July it was passed through the FA Council. So basically, national regulations were changed. Nobody now under the age of 16 is allowed to attend a personal hearing in person. If you are under 18, you can choose whether you attend or whether that is done online. But Mark Ives, to be fair to him, took it a little step further, that anybody that is considered potentially as a vulnerable adult can also request that it's done online as well. There will be some changes coming up in terms of referees training, but that's for next season. We haven't quite got that in quick enough yet, around, the way that they deal with, young referees and things like that. So I was really pleased that was changed. Really pleased with that.
I think that deserves a round of applause.
Absolutely. I was going to say the same thing. It's like, wow, this horrible situation that you've affected some real change with. Brilliant.
Brilliant, yeah.
You've got to get a positive out of something negative, and I couldn't sit back because I was angry. And I have to admit, my son let it go very quickly. I didn't. I still 6 months down the line wanted to kill the coaches. No, obviously not physically, but I was still really angry, really upset. And I'll be honest with you, the impact on me was then every game I went to watch my son referee, I would get up in the morning with, that anxiety in the pit of my stomach of what if that happens again? I now deal with things differently. I will challenge coaches now in a good way. And I also have challenged parents as well when they've been shouting at referees, not just my son, but other young referees. So I've learned a lot from it. And I'm now more confident in the way that I deal with abuse at junior football, because it is abuse. If you're going to shout aggressively at a child who's 14, 15 years of age on a football pitch, that is abuse. So there's no arguments for that. It's abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've said similar things, haven't we? We've said it's child abuse. If this happened in the street and it wasn't on a football pitch, the ramifications of it would be so much worse than they are when the FA get involved. And for the FA for so long to think, well, we'll just invite this 14-year-old child in for an FA hearing and they can fight their case against coaches who have abused them. I can't believe it's taken an outside force like yourself, Ceri, to come in and say, hang on, what are you thinking here? Can you not see what you're doing to children?
I think Nathan, from your point of view, resilience and stuff like that, how much work have you done in regards to what Ceri flashed up as a parent? Because I don't think parents of match officials, particularly under the age of 18, 16, really get considered in standing there watching, their child get threatened and verbally abused. Because remember, a year almost to the day before we got in touch with each other, Ceri and I, was the Max Ormisher case, which it was almost identical. And when I pointed that out to Ceri, she was like, I can't believe that. That made you a bit more angry, didn't it, Ceri? Because you thought, well, those changes were... And then Max's dad, Graham, we always said, if you ever need me for anything because the help we give him, get back in touch. He went on TalkSport and he said, look, the FA promised everything and nothing happened. Absolutely. Let's not this just be Emperor's New Clothes. And I think we had a reference point then. Actually, this isn't just what happened to Ceri's son. We've had Max Ormisher. We've had another girl called Rianne, whose mother's really active on social media and works with us a lot. So there's this sort of negative legacy happening where, what are you going to do to change things? And then obviously having someone, a juggernaut of a drive and professional from Ceri, they were never going to get away. And of course, that's where we've always wanted to be with the assaults. Just keep going. More to reference where before someone gets murdered, we want something to change. And I think we're getting closer and closer there. Ceri, we have discussions because everyone knows what I do. I intentionally pull people's tail because it gets discussed. If you don't pull someone's tail, it just becomes a dead sweet. We'll go at clubs, we go at individuals, we go at county FAs. Essex County FA only this past Sunday tweeted us saying, thank you very much for flashing what happened up to us of a referee getting a perforated eardrum. So we know we're starting to climb that ladder of people to go, actually, we need to do more. And what Ceri did is a good example of that. So from a child and parent's point of view, what's your take on that, Nate?
Well, I think it's interesting, because one of the things that I've been doing a lot of work with, prior to the pandemic, certainly was doing a lot of work with county FAs on, was trying to help newly qualified officials with the workshops that we've been talking with a lot of the RDOs about, how can we do something that will help, or what do you need us to do, rather, I should say, to help the newly qualified referees deal with parent spectators, to deal with club officials, to even deal with players. Because I think even when there's sometimes players who are a little bit younger than them, or even with players who are the same age as them, which I think there's some sort of dubiousness as to whether they should be doing those games when they're newly qualified or not. Well, I know that certainly giving them strategies to deal with that and talking through situations that they've had, it's definitely helped. And I think that massively they can help, colleagues can massively help each other by talking about these experiences that they've had together. And just all the work that they've really done is really, really difficult to understand how they deal with it. But what I would say, just sort of as a bit of a point from what Ceri said, I think it's great that her son in particular has that characteristic, and that, obviously I've spoken about it on here before. I'm a mental toughness practitioner, and a lot of my work goes around doing reports on people to see how mentally tough they are and things like that. So I think that one of the things that I'm really sort of pleased to hear is that what it sounds like to me is that Ceri has a very naturally mentally tough son, which I think is an absolute key characteristic for referees, because obviously we have a lot of difficulty to deal with, and it's a very big part of the job. If I can just touch on though as well, talking about the whole situation about going into county FAs and defending yourself as a young referee. I saw something in relation to the Merseyside derby at the weekend, talking about the tackle with Jordan Pickford on Virgil van Dijk. And a lot of people saying, if that happened on the street, and another Ant said, if that happened on the street. I think that one of the things that seems to be accepted in football generally is that there's this, and I saw a lawyer or a solicitor tweeting about this after that Merseyside derby, is that there's this, I'm not entirely sure if I've got the legal wording of this right, but it's something along the lines of implied sporting intent or something like that. And it seems that this is a clause within the legal system that means that, obviously I know that, Martin, you've talked about going to the sentencing council and things like that, but this seems to be, in my mind anyway, my reading of it, from what that a legal expert said, is it seems to be what they're kind of hiding behind, or not hiding behind, maybe that's the wrong turn of phrase, but it seems to be the reason why prosecutions and various things that in relation to what happened on a football pitch, or in terms of the FA directives of what's happened within the FA traditionally. I think those things are all really, really crucial reasons as to why these things that obviously Ceri's just started to change with the paper and the things that are coming up in the next next season. I think these are all reasons why those are enshrined. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying that I think these are reasons why these things are enshrined in the systems, in the legal system and in the FA system.
Well, yeah, no, I'll back up what your point was there, because in the same reason that two boxers having a fight in a sporting event won't be, arrested for a fray or assault or anything like that, because they are taking part in the sport in which they are competing. That stuff that's on the field of play is the same sort of thing. But we've got to kind of accept there's some not extrajudicial, because that's not the right way of saying it, but things that happen beyond the norm in football, like the referee getting assaulted, isn't part of the game. There's no way that could be considered part of a normal game.
Yeah, or even in fact, to carry on what you've just said there, if one of the boxers turned around and give the referee a write-up.
Well, I've seen boxers arrested for doing that.
So you see, I think that's the situation that is also comparative.
Look what happened with the Cantona and at Crystal Palace when he jumped into the crowd.
Yeah.
So I mean, he never got banned from every stadium in Great Britain for 2 years, but the fan did.
Yeah.
So there's this crossover which has always been there for a while, which again, when we wrote to the FA and said about getting the designated as a vulnerable role, all that will kick in.
Yeah.
All that will kick. We don't need to go to the sentencing council.
Yeah.
Because the sentencing council is after the person's been assaulted. Mm-hmm. We want to do as much as we can to stop people getting assaulted. Yeah. That's why I've always been against the sentencing council. I know Kerry's a bit more aware of what's going on than me, but that's too late. Maybe to concentrate on getting the deterrence and stronger messages that the FA can bring in immediately. They can do it at any time. It doesn't have to be seasonal. We've had this discussion with Mark Ives. That's where us and the RA should be going together in a cohesive approach to say, can you help us get a referee, as you said you were going to do with the FA, designated as a vulnerable role? Absolutely huge amounts of protection will come in then. They will get arrested automatically. You don't have to worry about, have you got it on footage? He'll make a statement. All these things kick in automatically. Automatically. So it's no use going to the sentencing council. But that's post-assault.
Yeah, it's too late.
You need to be doing something to prevent it happening first. And as you know, we've got a barrister on board with it. We're quietly getting on with what we're doing. And hopefully, in a not too distant future, we'll be able to go answer that one.
Yeah. I really hope, though, Martin, that what you always say, Martin. I really hope it's not the case that somebody gets, like a referee I'm talking about here, gets a brain injury, or worse than that, is killed, and that is the ultimate reason for why it's happened. I really, really hope we don't get to that situation, because what I will say, and I've said this before, we've had this discussion previously on previous episodes. I think we had a very somber episode when we talked about the Satyam case initially. Unfortunately, in this country, and I know that Sanjay Bandari, the chair of Kick It Out, has also kind of endorsed the same sentiments as what I've seen. we have had in this country since the Brexit referendum a real rise in racially aggravated sort of incidents within football, on a football pitch. You know, sexism has gone up, and so has homophobia. You know, I told you guys earlier privately, and I don't mind saying this, although you might have to cut it out depending on what you think. I have actually sent 2 players off for use of homophobic language this season. I can't recall ever having done that before in a previous season.
Yeah, I've not sent off for homophobic, but I have sent off a racist. And there was one as well. I don't know if I mentioned this before on the podcast, that I was refereeing in Wales whilst I was at uni, and I heard racist language used. I did nothing. I still think about that now, like 15 years later. Like, it's one of those things that stays with you. I think if you don't take action when you know you should have, that's horrible.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, if we can, is the next thing that Ceri's working on, which will be another national campaign, is mentoring. And before I get Ceri to explain a little bit more about that, when you two started, which is relatively recent with regards to, I know, Anthony, you've been going for a while, but you've been involved in promotion and stuff like that. Did you ever get offered mentors when you passed the course, or any media post, course support?
I was assessed, I think, on one of my very first games, like a proper formal assessment. And it just absolutely slated me in one of my very first games as a newly qualified referee. And it was open age. It was a competitive game. Goals were flying in all over the place. I had not been given any mentoring or anything. I'd literally passed the course. I'd maybe done a couple of youth games during the course while it was on, because you had to pass a laws of the game test. Or I can't remember how it was, but there was a certain point you got to whilst doing the course. Then you could start refereeing youth games or friendlies or something like that. So I'd already started doing a couple of games, refereeing my brother's youth team. And then when I'd passed the course, one of the first games after becoming a qualified referee at level 7 was assessed. And it was horrible. Like this guy had come along. I don't know if he knew that I was a new referee, but he had slated me, told me I'd missed fouls, told me I'd missed offside, told me my positioning was awful, told me my fitness was crap. Literally everything that a referee could do wrong was in that report. And I got a copy of this report. He gave me a very, very brief debrief at the end of it, just saying you'll get something through in the post to for your assessment wise, use it for pointers and whatever. And I remember getting that through and thinking, wow, I'm shit. Like, what's the point of even...
Nothing constructive in there.
Nothing constructive at all, no. And it wasn't until a while later in that season I'd had a few more... I joined the local RA and mentioned, by that point, I'd had a couple of more assessments. They were improving. They were done by other people as well that were a bit more constructive, bit more... at the end of it, there was a proper debrief to him, giving instructions about positioning and all that sort of stuff. And I did mention this very first one at the end of the season. All of the referees, league secretaries got together to the referee secretary of that league and said, I got a really bad assessment at the start of the season. And he said, oh, yeah, I just got that. I saw it myself. I just threw it in the bin. And I was like, but surely at that point, did you not think, I'll have a word with the assessor and say, this kid is, I think he was like 18, 19 at the time. So a kid for all intents and purposes. Brand new to refereeing, hadn't done much before, freshly qualified, and was refereeing open age, one of the very first open age games I was doing. But that didn't seem to register on his radar to kind of have a go at the assessor. The assessor, for whatever reason, I assume would just carry on doing that if he wasn't getting pulled up for it. And then me, my brother and I qualified at the same time. I was 19, he was like 14, 15, something like that. He did a handful of youth games and then just jibbed it in because he was abused badly. Like he did one of these summer tournaments. did a final because all of the older refs had gone home early with their free burgers and their match fee for the day, so they weren't going to stick around. And he did a final. Both teams absolutely got on his back, called him all sorts, and he was like, "Fuck, I'm not doing that again." Yeah. Which potentially, if I had been a different mindset when I got that assessment through, I would have gone, well, clearly I'm awful at refereeing, so I'm just not going to do it anymore. What's the point of doing it? Yeah. The match wasn't an enjoyable match. I will always remember it. There was a couple of red cards. I was out there doing my best. But in terms of having a mentor, someone to just like coach me and help me, or even just be there for me on the first few games so I could talk to before the game, at halftime, at full time, they don't even have to do any coaching. They could just literally stand there and say, how do you feel that you've done? What do you think you could have done better? And then or maybe just chipped in some ideas of themselves. Yeah. That was missing, which is a shame, because I'm sure at the time it was one of the things that was promised to us as the game. Once you qualified as a referee, you get a mentor or you get something for your first 10 games or whatever. And then when you do those 10 games, your mentor will get you signed off or whatever. But that was missing from when I first qualified. But that was, I want to say, almost 20 years ago. It was about 2002, 2003, something like that.
I think I was very lucky, to be honest. The way I came into refereeing was with a friend. He said, do you want to do the course with me? And his dad had been a referee who got to about sort of, I think what it would be now was at level 2A. He was a great mentor for me. Really funny guy, really lovely guy, really warm guy. And that really helps, I think, when I was 16 when I started. And I think when you're quite nervous about doing things, and I remember I did my first game and I can't remember the result. I only remember the home team, but I do remember the guidance he gave me, because the clubs give me the same feedback, which was really good, which was about being more clear with signals. So so that immediately into the next game, you think, right, okay, I need to be a bit more clear with the signals. So I'm going to bang up an arm for a corner. I'm going to get that arm right out when there's a throw in. If I have to give a penalty, I'm going to be really sharp. I'm going to be on the spot. I'm going to point to it nice and clearly. And it gives you really something to work with. And I think that, I was talking with a sports psychologist. It was actually David Charlton, who was on a previous episode of this. I was talking to him yesterday, and he was saying to me, talking about golf, but I think that the principles of coaching apply across the board. If you give somebody 9 or 10 things that are critical of what they've done, it's overwhelming, it's too much, it's too difficult to deal with. If you give them 1 or 2, maybe 3 at a push pointers, there's 3 solid things they can take. And if you've got a mentor for 5 or 6 games, your first 5 or 6 games, you give them 2 or 3, hopefully they'll apply them in the next game. Then you give them the next 2 or 3. You break it down, you make it in manageable chunks. And that's the best way that I believe you can support a young referee or a referee who's a new referee and is learning to referee ultimately.
But this is where it brings in lovely to what Ceri wants to do. And Ceri's backgrounds, apprentices and all that sort of stuff. She wouldn't call herself, but I think she's an expert in it. And you touched on that, the stuff that there's lots of stuff that is transferable. I know not one model fits all, but there is sort of boundaries of how you deliver it. And before Ceri explains a little bit more, if you remember a while back, one of our previous blogs, I took a lad to me who did a similar role to Ceri to watch a game. And someone had an heart attack in the stand. So the referee's at 2A now. So I said to him, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to sort it all out. And I went out and I talked to the secretary. I talked to both managers. I come back in and said, everyone's going to be delayed. Went back in to the dressing room, said to the referee, look, I've done this, I've done that, I've done that. Oh, thanks, Matt. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone was happy. Delayed second half. Going home in the car, my mate said, you want me to come to you and give you some feedback? I said, yeah. He said, did you think it was good, you going out and talking to the captains, you going out and talking to the secretary, you going out and talking to because they didn't know who you were. They were like, who's this lad? And how did that help the referee? Because they just think, oh, is he the boss, not the referee? You should have gone in the dressing room and said, right, pass on my knowledge. Now you go and deliver that knowledge. And I think that ties in well to what Ceri's probably going to talk about now, if she'll mute herself.
Yeah, so I think for me, I didn't want I didn't want to stop what I was doing in terms of, helping young referees, supporting young referees. So obviously I've got involved with ref support as a parental ambassador, but I've also got involved now with the Referees Association in terms of welfare. So one of my sort of key aims is around campaigns. So the big one for me is probably mentoring, and it came from something my son said. And it was probably just before the start of this season. And he said to me, "Do you know what, Mum?" He said, "I didn't have a clue what I was doing in that first game." And he said, it doesn't excuse two adults abusing him, but he actually admitted he had no idea what he was doing. So I then started to look into, and obviously he does have mentors, but they're mentors that I have organised. So I made sure we joined our local RA with Stockport Refs Association. They're fantastic. So he has mentors through that. His dad's friend is also a referee, so he mentors him. And obviously my job, I work in learning and development. I'm a learning and development manager, so I'm a qualified coach. I work with apprentices. I train mentors in work of how to look after our young apprentices. We've now got an award-winning apprenticeship programme at work, and we wouldn't have had that if we didn't have great mentors. It's the mentors that make that programme, because they're the people that develop our youngsters and our young apprentices. So we need to transfer that over into refereeing. So I started to ask people who had done referees courses recently, what mentoring did you get? The vast majority, if I'm honest, came back and said, nothing. We did the course, and the course states, if you look on every county FA website, it states that as part of the course, you will do 5 games at 9v9 or 11v11, obviously with offsides, and then you come back after that once you've done those 5 games, and that is when you qualify, but that you will get a mentor for those first 5 games. So I started to ask people. So my son had no mentoring from the county FA in those first 5 games. I've spoken to other parents now and other newly qualified and young referees, and half of those parents said to me, "What, is that a thing? Is that supposed to happen?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it's on the website. It's what you pay as part of your fee for the course, your £120 to £170. That's what you pay for." So I decided to just check this out, and bear with me, I've got it in an email. So I decided to check this out with the National FA just to see what was supposed to happen. So what they told me was that all county FAs offer mentoring for newly qualified referees. Each county FA will offer support to each newly qualified referee with the level of support linked to the county FA's own individual mentoring support scheme. It must be stressed that not every newly qualified referee chooses to accept the support, and they are free to decline the offer of a mentor. You only decline an offer of a mentor if it's offered in the first place. So I'm not quite sure how well the FA know what's going on with the county FAs in terms of mentoring, but I have spoken to now probably 8 or 9 different people from 8 or 9 completely different county FAs, and not one of them has been offered mentoring in those first 5 games. So my next campaign is around that mentoring, and we have got to stop training up young referees, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and just throwing them into the lion's den to be mauled and chewed up by adult coaches and parents, because that's what's happening in a lot of instances. Now, I know at the minute, obviously, the FA are, it's desperate times. They're looking to save money. But I'm pretty sure there are county FAs out there that are doing this and doing it exceptionally well. I spoke to one in North East Wales a couple of weeks ago, and they explained how their mentoring programme works. So what I'm looking for is people to get in touch with me to tell me one of 2 things. So the first thing is, are you part of a county FA where you have been offered mentoring, and how's that worked? What does that look like? Why has that been successful? But then I'm also looking to talk to people who have qualified in the last couple of years, who have received nothing, no mentoring, no support, no updates on the laws of the game at the start of the season, just so that I can sort of come up with some percentages of who's doing it, who isn't, but then try to spread the word about the great stuff that's going on. So the county FA I spoke to in North East Wales, their mentoring programme is now being taken up nationally by the Welsh FA, because when they look at their retention figures for newly qualified referees are 60% higher than any of the other county FAs. And they put that down to having their mentoring programme. They guarantee mentoring for the first 4 games, and they have a group of people that do that. So I suppose really I'm just looking for people to get in touch to let me know about their experiences of mentoring. So again, I can pull a paper together and pull all that research together and go and speak to county FAs, go and speak to the Football Association to see if there is anything I can do with other people's support to change that for newly qualified referees.
I think that, obviously I just touched on my experience just prior to that. And I think that what's obviously been really good for me is the fact that I did have that support and I did have somebody in the first few games. And I feel really lucky about that. And it's something that I hope my county in Durham have continued with under the new RDO. And I feel like they will have, because the management of the county affairs has not changed, and the standards obviously in the northeast generally are obviously quite high. Obviously, we've produced a number of top level referees in sort of the last 20 years. So I think that it has proved to be a good proving ground. But I do think it's a big surprise to me. This, I have to say, obviously. I've talked about the fact that I'm working with county FAs and I'm trying to help, in places, obviously amongst core groups and promotion candidates. Another main group is newly qualified officials, but it does surprise me, to be quite honest, that in certain areas I may be the first bit of coaching that they're getting since they've qualified, in terms of how to deal with some of the scenarios that they're going to face on a match day. I think also what would be interesting as well is to understand to what extent those referees are going into games where things like the respect barrier are in use, because I think that would also be very interesting. But I'm gathering that your son was not with a mentor. Was not with your son on his first game.
No, he wasn't. Basically, there was me and his dad. And I think we were probably that shocked at the time that I didn't know what I was allowed to say, what I was allowed to do, or whether I just literally had to stand back and listen to it. And that's what I did. I wouldn't do that now. Yeah. If that happened now, I would take very different action, but I certainly wouldn't stand back and allow that to happen. Yeah. But a lot of young referees at our central venues in our junior league don't have their parents with them. No. Some of them are at venues where there are no volunteers there. Most of them are, but some of them, their parents have no idea, that this kind of stuff can go on. Yeah. We've had referees at our central venues been abused, been in tears, been shouted at. And we have a group of volunteers who will support those referees, and they do it extremely well. But I would never let my son go refereeing without me being there, or his dad. There's no way. But he does tell me to be quiet. He heard me having a quiet word with a parent a couple of weeks ago who was abusing another referee, and I pointed out the yellow armband that he was wearing and said, look, you do realise that's a child you're shouting at. Yeah. My son heard me because he's tuned into my voice, and at half-time he came over and went, Mum, can you just be quiet? Let us ref, stop getting involved. And I said, I can't. I said, if I'm hearing an adult abusing a child, I will say something. Yeah. But his games where he has mentors, I have to say, are so much better. And again, exactly like yourself and Ant have said, he gets a couple of things at half-time about, his signals being clearer, the sharpness of his whistle in certain situations. He got some feedback about the positioning of his corners a couple of weeks ago. He's totally changed his positioning with corners now. Yeah. His feedback, and I don't know why he doesn't get this, but he was told he needs to be a bit louder. With a mum like me, how he's not loud, I don't know. Because I've certainly got a loud voice. I speak, people hear me. So, but he gets a couple of things each week off a mentor, and he puts those into practice, so much so that one of the other referees that he works at the same venue as, his mum said to me, his signals are really clear, aren't they? And his whistles, you can hear his whistle. And that is as a direct result of having a mentor. Another direct result of having a mentor is his confidence soared to the point where last season, later on, he sent a coach off who came storming across the pitch swearing at another coach in an under-10s game. He showed him a red card. He went. And then another situation 2 or 3 weeks ago where a coach was screaming about an offside. And at the end of the match, he approached the coach and said, if you carry on screaming and shouting at referees in an aggressive way like that, he said, we're going to lose referees in this league. That's why we have a shortage of young referees, because people like you shout at us. And I was like, wow. He wouldn't have done that a year ago. He approached an adult in a very sensible, mature way and told him. I was extremely proud. I missed the sending off, though. I would have liked to have been there to have seen that, but he was with his dad. But because of the mentoring, he has got more confident. He handles difficult situations far better now. He had a situation 2 weeks ago where, unfortunately, a young player in an under-14s game broke and dislocated his ankle 10 minutes into the game. We had no idea how to handle that situation, and the son certainly didn't, because it's never happened before. It's the first time. Luckily, he had his mentor there from Stockport Referees Association who helped him through that whole process of how to manage that. So mentors, they're absolutely crucial to our young referees, and it shows in North East Wales that if they have good mentors, you get the retention.
I know it's one from IFAB and it's a law change that's come in, but do you feel, I don't know if your son was refereeing before this law was brought in, but do you feel there's a significant difference now that coaches can be carded?
Absolutely. I mean, my son's only been refereeing for 12 months, so he has only ever known that, but it takes an awful lot of guts and courage and bottle for a 14-year-old to show an adult a red card. And it takes time for them to get the confidence to do that. So I see it time and time again on social media, you know, more mature or older people or referees who've been doing it a long time saying, well, they've got the tools, they can just show them a card. But how tough is that, you know? And they will only do that when their confidence is built. And they can only do that with support, with development, with mentoring. And if they're just left on their own, how do they ever learn to have the confidence to use the tools at their disposal, i.e. red and yellow cards? And sin bins, he had used sin bins.
I just want to take that to use it as a point as well. The FA will say that dissent, this and that, they're all down statistically year on year because we've got like more games, but less dissent, less this, less that. But the fact is, I think that there's definitely a mindset where people don't want to or don't have the confidence to use these tools that are being given to them. So the FA tick, big win for us. We brought this in. A dissent is down. The fact is, you've got like you say, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old having to show a card to a 35 or 40-year-old. That's the same generational gap as like them telling their parents off. And I don't know how many children of that age would have the bottle to turn around and say, no, listen, Mum, you're wrong there. So here is that's going to cost you £10. So you know what I mean. But the FA need to be honest with themselves and just acknowledge the fact that there is. I've noticed it so much since COVID restrictions have lifted and football has restarted again. The extremes have gone way further out. So the people who are grateful and happy to be playing football are so grateful and happy, and they're just enjoying their game. But on the other end, the people that used it as a release for their aggression and their pent-up frustration that they've always done because maybe their 9 to 5 or their Monday to Fridays are a lot tougher now. There's a lot more uncertainty in their lives. So their release, their outlet, which was football on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning, has just gone off the scale, and they've turned into some of the most difficult, horrible people to referee and officiate.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, just touching on what you've said there as well, I think that, you know, I've heard a lot of positive things about not just the cards for coaches coming in, but also the sin bins for dissent. And people saying, you know, that has made it easier for younger referees to deal with difficult adults. But obviously, I've been an adult the whole time that since it's come in. But I would be really interested, obviously, as well, and I'm sure Ceri would, to understand whether that really is the case, whether the younger referees do feel that it's like a buffer and it gives them that, to be able, because obviously it's a big thing to show a card, as Ceri said, but I think also to then have them in that sin bin, does that help or does that diminish? I've heard it helps, but it'd be interesting to see, particularly with those under 18s, newly qualified referees, what impact it has and how difficult or easy it is.
Yeah, can I just sort of throw something in there? I know you will probably get some people that will have the train of thought, well, if you've got a young referee who then doesn't have the confidence necessarily to show a coach a red card, should they be refereeing? But that would be a little bit like, so at work, I look after a huge group of apprentices. And some of our apprentices, they're welding and fabrication apprentices, and they're welding and learning to weld 20-ton steel beams, really complex jobs. So they're not going to do that right at the start. They're not going to have the skill to be able to do that particular task to the standard that we want. They will do that through mentoring, through support, through time, through practice. It's exactly the same as our young referees. You cannot expect a 14-year-old or even an 18-year-old to necessarily, in the first couple of games or the first couple of months, to have the confidence to do that. They're exactly like apprentices. They need support, they need guidance, they need mentoring, they need practice, they need nurturing. And if we do all that, we get better referees at the end of it. But at the minute, it feels like in a lot of instances, as I say, we're just throwing them out there to be eaten alive to an extent. And it's sink or swim. And some of them do swim. My son is now so much more confident. He loves his referee. He gets up on a Saturday, Sunday morning with a smile on his face. He gets an under-14s game, his 11v11s, which he's recently started doing a lot of. And he buzzes from it. It's fantastic. But not everybody's like that, and they need more support. They need more mentoring. So we've got to find a way, regardless of resources, regardless of money, regardless of COVID, we have to find a solution to this. And the research maybe is the start of finding that solution.
I think it's you touched on a few things there, mate, that I rewind a bit on. You said about when you're at a game, now you'll go to other parents who are abusing other referees and you're saying that's a child got an armband on. This is a strategy that works. And I know some people probably don't recognise it, what we do on Twitter. That's what we do on Twitter. We are the electronic version of you going over to a balloon head on the side of a pitch going, do you realise that's a kid? Do you actually realise what you're doing? And what we find is with that strategy, other people now are tagging me in or sending me private messages or I don't want to say anything, Matt, but look at this, then we go after them. So it's sort of getting policed now where people who don't want to do what you do, but still as passionate and still as, objectionable about it, they'll send it to me and then we go. So that's the first point I want to drag in with you. But I think all of us are addressing abuse in all our small ways will definitely change things for the better. Now, when you said about getting better referees from mentoring, you not only get that, you'll get referees. Because if you don't mentor them, we won't even have any referees, never mind good ones. And I think I can evidence this right back to 20 years ago when we did our mentoring around here and we took them to events and we took them to places and we've talked on here about RDOs. RDOs aren't RDOs. They'll tell it themselves. They don't have time to go to a game and sit there with 10 referees just talking to a game. And I know every one of them would love to do that, but they haven't got it. They're all inundated with admin, and because they're so busy during the day, they need time off for their own families or their own referees' careers. They can't go off and give that back, even though they want to. So having them to do less admin and stuff like that would really help that happen from a county FA, where one RDO can do 10 or 20 mentorings in one game. Yeah. It's not difficult. Having Zoom, again, stuff like this is really, really, really changing the landscape of it. Yeah. But there's one thing that really needs to be sorted out with mentoring, is that the referees have got to want to be mentored. They've got to want to be challenged. They've got to want to be learned. A lot of them go into core, and this used to be the same with academies. they've never been told they've got a decision wrong. They've never been told they're in the wrong position. And they get to like 18 and they think they're going to be Premier League in 6 or 7 years. And it absolutely pushes my buttons when I see someone saying, oh, I've just seen this referee. He's the next FIFA referee for this county. I'm like, what are you doing? Have you just realised that if that child doesn't get there, he's going to think they're a failure? You can't put these sorts of destinations on children. Oh, you're definitely going to get at least Football League. You're definitely going to at least get level 3. If they don't, it's a massive failure for them. So I think how we mentor and how mentored is received needs to be looked at. And the national game strategy that was all thrown out a couple of years ago is completely disappeared. There isn't one. The DNA of refereeing, go and find anyone talking about that. And what happens is the referees department particularly are guilty of. They say these things, they're going to do this, and then nothing happens. If you even look at the FA refereeing Twitter account, look how active that is. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrible. Here we are as a charity battering everybody. No one gets a bean. How can we set up like that when you've got full-time employees at Wembley running it, as I know who runs it, and they're doing one tweet a day maybe, and that's a retweet. They're not putting out, even through COVID, he did about 3 Zoom meetings or 3. That's just not good enough.
No.
That's just not good enough. And I think it's just everyone just allowing to be criticised. People criticise us, say we're too harsh on people. But, what are you going to do about it? If we don't do anything, do we just stay silent? And it just keeps on going? Or do we actually ignite the discussion either way? And I think that's when everyone starts doing it a little bit, like you said, Ceri. Some parents, some men won't go over to other people and go, hey mate, that's a kid. Max Ormish's dad said one of the most infuriating things he had to do was stand on the line and see his kid get threatened. And he was told that, of course, don't worry, we'll deal with it. We'll throw the book at them. Yeah. Oh, really? So even when you punch someone on camera, you're only going to get 10 years. That's all you're going to get. Because, the idea is, everyone needs to be rehabilitated, so give them a chance. Well, I think you need to draw the line there. Someone's just ban them for life. They made that choice.
Yeah. We got told a similar thing. So we got told, don't stand away from the parents and coaches, just stand away on your own, stay out of the way. And abuse is rare. It's very rare. And then obviously, bang, you go into that first game and it's horrific. Actually standing away from the parents and coaches is totally the wrong thing to do. What you do is you arrive at the venue, you walk your son down the respect line, past the parents, you smile, you say, morning, hi, how are you? That's my son. And inside, you've got this little Rottweiler going, just you dare. Just you dare. But you've got a big smile on your face. You're like, oh, God, it's great. It's not raining today. Pitch played up well, got a bit of sunshine. Have a great game, everyone. He's with me.
Yeah.
And you know what? It works. Not every parent, obviously, is as perhaps as in your face as I am, or maybe as confident. But I actually find that does work, and it works to make yourself very visible as a parent and let the other parents know that your child is not there on his own and he's not there to be shouted at or abused. And I know it works because there was one game he did where a lovely dad was sat on his chair with his can of lager at an under-12s game, and he shouted at his son, "Oi, you should have gone to Specsavers." And his wife or girlfriend turned around, has given him a crack across the head and gone, "Shut up, the referee's mother is stood over there." Not to peep out of him after that. I didn't even have to say anything. I just smiled at her and winked, and she smiled at me, and it was all good. But you generally get, when you admit to being the referee's mother, you get this look, you get this. And they go, "Oh, that must be so difficult." And I go, it is sometimes. It's really great when we have parents like you who are dead positive and really nice and supportive. It's hard when we get ones that are shouty and they're being abusive to my child. And those parents then are lovely. You've got to engage with people. You've got to talk to them. But it's you still need these are. Everybody needs mentoring, they need support, they need feedback, but they need it done in the right way. So definitely not the way that it was done for you, Anne. I would love to get hold of that assessor and invite them on one of my leadership courses I run at work to teach them about mentoring, coaching, positive language, the words that we use. But how many of the mentors that we've got have actually had training themselves? And the ones that have had training, what's the standard of that training? Who are teaching the mentors? So again, that's another issue.
I know, and it's really absolutely interesting. It's a conversation for another day, which we'll definitely have you back on. Is the fact that no one regulates what the referees department put out as quality of education.
Yeah,
Ofsted can't look at them because Ofsted will just say, poof, you wouldn't touch any near the standards of Ofsted. We've said for a long time the referees departments, all that training should be in FA learning. But why have we got one department of the whole of football difference? And then when something come out on COVID, all of a sudden it said, "Oh, we've talked to FA Learning and they're okay with us doing it more or less with the FA speak." So why did he all of a sudden mention FA Learning? He never mentioned it before, because we flashed it up saying during COVID, FA Learning with all the coaches badges and all that, they've been getting loads of stuff, but we've been getting one or two little webinars. It's disgraceful. I just don't know why FA Learning hasn't got all the refereeing. And then you have things that happened with us, Ceri. We talked about this in the last blog. When I was working with the FA and I was running running the whole of the Southwest Academy, and I was the coordinator for it. So we used to have Anthony Taylor doing Cheshire up that way. I think he still does. Kevin Friend doing the Midlands. All really, really good people we could all bounce off. As soon as I stopped doing that, I was fine. Everyone listened to Scouse. Everyone listened to Matt and Cassidy. As soon as I stepped away, literally the week later, said, "I don't want to do that. I don't believe in core," because he was swapping it all over to core. I just don't believe in the word excellence in anything like that. But now I did ref support. All of a sudden, I wasn't credible. The same person. I wasn't credible just because I was a different organisation. And then they started saying, "Oh, they're not approved." Well, neither's the FA, and the FA education are approved. So all this language that you go back to, the positive language, is really, really important. And when you reflect on what we did in the beginning as a charity, we just wanted to help people. They thought it wouldn't happen. And then when it started happening, that's when they started putting obstacles in the way, because people were asking, "How come they can do it for nothing? No one gets paid, nothing. They're having all this success. We have 12 coaches going out within months, but you've only got 10 in core. Well, what's all that about?" So this is where barriers started to come. Then we were getting more people promoted in our schemes than core was. So that caused a problem. They started saying, "Oh yeah, but we had 20 cup finals and you never had any." They're like a real terrible, terrible thing to do. So with the positive language, this is tying back to you, Ceri, do you think it's wise to have the word excellence in a program that trains referees? And before you answer, the reason I say it's not is that when I used to go to games and you seen an FA badge, you only did it about once or twice early on, and then I never wore an FA badge again because of it. "Are you with that referee? He's crap. Are you is this? Are you is that?" And then when we started doing core, I went to a game to watch a Lino, and the referee was in core. And the bloke said, "Well, what's that?" "Oh yeah, the referee's in core." And the coach was trying to say, "He's a good ref today. Because he's in core, he's going to be fucking brilliant." Oh, pardon my words. He's going to be brilliant. What happened is, the first mistake that person made, "Oh, that's excellent, is it?"
Yeah,
you tell me that's excellent. You got excellent on your coat. It's a massive, massive problem, I believe. But they just go on with it because I don't see why you would have. Are we trying to achieve excellence, training referees? Or are we trying just referees to be better than they were when they engage with us? Are we trying to get excellence? What's your take on
that? Just quickly on mine, I've got to go in 2 minutes, guys. I'll leave a pause. So just quickly on mine, our county FA, and I will name them on this occasion. So Manchester County FA, don't use the word core. They have a pathway, and they have their new referees. They have development group. Then they have their academy group. And I love those words. So my son was extremely lucky that he was chosen as one of 4 referees on the new course to join the development group. He doesn't make a big deal out of it. I don't make a big deal out of it. Pre-COVID, he went along once a month. He worked with other referees. They had lots of training sessions. They had lots of discussions and lots of development. He thoroughly enjoyed it. But there's no edge to it. He doesn't go, "I'm in core," because there's no excellence. It's about developing him as a referee. and that's what he really enjoys. And we don't treat it as a big deal because it is about development. That's it. So I actually really like the fact that Manchester FA don't use the word cut. They just don't go there. It's great.
And let's give a shout out to the chief exec of Manchester FA. I've dealt with him a couple of years with various things. I know we had some communication with him, with your boys, but he is a very forward-thinking, cracking chief exec. Even though he's a Man United fan.
No.
But he is a top like Colin Bridgeford. So if he happens to listen to this, I'd love to get some more conversations going with him. I know he's a good man. I know he comes from the right intention. Sometimes his hands might be tied, but he's a wonderful, progressive chief exec and should deserve a shout out. So well done. Yeah. Eddie, I know you got to go now, work commitments and all that.
Loads of coaching and mentoring stuff.
The good stuff.
Listen, I think you're going to be a game changer.
We'll see.
Eddie, mate, and I think there's plenty more to come from you. And I love you involved with helping us, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the pod. It's been brilliant speaking to you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really good. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Ceri.
You take care, mate.
See y'all soon.
Bye.